Hey, it's your girl, Marilyn Shaw, and I am so excited, as always, to host an awesome conversation on the Live and Share podcast. This platform has been designed to have honest conversations with successful individuals about how they are able to navigate life, be successful in their career and endeavors while still remaining committed to their faith. And today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Lynette. This is so awesome because Lynette and I were on a project together. And as you can see in her background, the book, It's Possible. It's a huge project that we endeavored. I think it was last year, wasn't it?
Just 1 year ago.
Yeah, we were able to be a part of the anthology where we shared our stories. And Lynette shared her story about the passing of her mom and then her, just getting to this new place in her life. So let's kick it off there. Welcome, Lynette. Thank you for being on the podcast. Tell us about that moment of you transitioning after the passing of your mom.
Yeah, we're gonna jump right in. First,
Yes,
thank you so
ma'am.
much for having me to share this platform. I love everything that you are doing in combining faith, and I just want to make sure I say that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's been, this summer actually was 5 years since my mom passed. So she passed in the summer of 2015, and gosh, it was such a really defining moment. Like, to use a cliche term, it was a defining moment because to see the process of death is much different. My heart goes out for those who experience like someone who unexpectedly passes. Like, I saw you this morning, now you're gone. But to kind of have time and to try to understand it, and to even have a friend speak over my life and say, hey, God is calling you to usher your mom into his presence. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Say who? Wait, what? And that was like probably a couple months before it really got into, oh, we're going into hospice care and we're doing some of those other things. But that always stuck with me of like, hey, there's a role to play and there's a purpose. And even one of the last things my mom, said to me on her bedside before she was, incapacitated to where she couldn't speak anymore. I was crying and she said, I can't do this without you. And it like snapped me back into place. And so that always stuck with me about like that sometimes your purpose to serve and your ability to be there for others requires you to kind of step into a position, whether you're ready or not, whether you want it assigned to you or not. And I think that's what the catalyst was, where what are the next stages of my life? How do I now understand the fragility of time? Because the concept of time is a construct that we've now made it to be. It's very different. Like we believe it's on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. And so that's the construct we work in. But I think I felt more aligned with God's timing, how he moves, what can you do in your time that you're here. And so I just really started to go after a lot of goals that I had put to the side, things that I was like, I'm going to do it, or things that I thought I could say, I have time to do it. And it was really part of my healing. I went back to graduate school. It was something I had been talking about for 10 years. Ended up having my second child while I was in graduate school, like got pregnant halfway through there, was still working a full-time job of like 50 plus hours at the Walt Disney Company. And, and then my current pivot, which is leaving the corporate world and starting my own business and just following God's plan for me and the calling on my life. But yeah, it really came down to, I think, those moments in those last months where I had a different perspective and understanding of what my time may be here.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you talk about that very fragile moment where your purpose was ignited while your mom's was ending. And that's so, like, even just me saying that gives me chills because sometimes we can get caught up in this rat race of running and achieving and doing all these things. And we never know when that moment will come where our purpose, not just we catch up to our purpose, I'll put it like that, where we really embody and stand in, even when the ground is so uncertain, even when you feel all this wave of emotion, you're there with your mom while she's transitioning and you're trying to capture all of this inside of you. And now it becomes your season. It becomes your time to stand in your truth and for you to really embody who you will be in this next season. And you know what's so interesting is that sometimes we'll look at purpose as just one thing, right? But who you were before still served for that season that you were in, but then you transitioned to a different element, a different time period for you to become who you needed to be for someone else. And it's amazing how we can find our strength in times where we feel like, Lord, you calling me to do this?
Yeah.
Like, for real, for real?
You're almost like, why would you tell that person to say that to me?
Yes.
Like tell them to take it back, because now that it's been said,
Yeah.
and now, am I supposed to receive it? Am I, what am I supposed to do with that, right? Someone tells you something weighty, like, you're going to be the person called to usher your mom into his presence. Wait, what? And again, it's like, when even still reflecting and going back, sometimes I go back to like those last 24 hours of like, did I experience that? Did that actually, happen? What was that moment? How was it a catalyst for how things are, here 5 years down the road? But I love that you just mentioned the piece on how our purpose, and it's like, it's not that it has to always just change and it's like this dramatic drop off the cliff change and it keeps doing this and keeps doing this. I think it is like the just the unveiling, and it's like, what are those next chapters and what is the growth from that? Because like you said, everything has served you well. I don't live with regrets of anything that I did, of having a 17-year corporate career and to build myself into leadership. I can say I've worked for one of the world's most recognized brands. It is still people's dream to go work for the Walt Disney Company, and to have been empowered enough to say, I chose to resign. I chose to move where God was moving me, and I was obedient, and get an opportunity. The same way I chose to accept the peace that needed to come with the understanding of what this passing meant, or the peace and the understanding and the activation of my faith. Like, it's these moments when you're on your purpose journey that it's like, are the worlds of activation, are they going to come together? Like, your human experience that you're living going to combine with your spiritual experience. And I just feel like I've just steadily been trying to be more attentive to that and more deliberate with that.
Yes. And I love the word activation, that your faith was activated after, in a different way, after the fact of your mom's transitioning into, even when you moved into your corporate arena, where you made a huge leap of faith to stand in your career of 17 plus years at Walt Disney, to now using what the skill sets and talents and the drive that you had there to a different platform. And I want you to talk about that a little bit, because sometimes we can see on social where it's like people are excited, like, girl, you're doing it, you're doing the thing. But then it's like they don't know what it took for you to have faith in that small, still voice, to move in a very unknown direction, to say that I'm going to have what I need when you can't see it in front of you. And that is so challenging to do, especially when it's just you and God. That's the only thing you're literally leaning on. And then you come out of this moment like, I got to explain this to my family, my coworkers, even to myself. I'm trying to grapple with all of this still. Like,
Yeah.
talk us through that process.
Yeah, it is one of those things where you kind of are having those conversations with yourself, because you're like, okay, well, you don't have to prepare. Like, I have a husband. What's that impact? And, what do those things look like? So my journey has been interesting. So I'll even go back to 2019 a little bit. So I had already coined 2019 the year of the pivot. I was, spending a weekend in San Diego, California. It's beautiful out there. I absolutely loved it. I'm sitting on the beach one early morning, around 6 a.m, watching the sunrise. These surfers are getting out there. And I'm like, 2020 is the year of the pivot. Like, God's going to pivot me in some directions. I know my heart is in like teaching and coaching and facilitation, and you've given me this education. I've gone back to graduate school. So I was like, okay, year of the pivot. That's all I kept saying. I would have career chats with, individuals in the area I was trying to move into in the corporate world. And, before pivot was a buzz term for 2020. And then all of a sudden, COVID happened and rolled in like on my anniversary weekend. It was kind of funny. We just like March 13th, well, forever will be ingrained for many of us. And so I was working, and then unprecedented in Disney history, we ride out hurricanes. We're the safe haven. We're the place that stays open. And we closed. So I worked a couple weeks post closure and was one of those individuals included in the furlough. But that's where I really blossomed, because I had to understand, again, with the construct of time, what am I going to do with this? I have a child who's going into distance learning, and we're all trying to figure it out. My husband's trying to teach from home and figure out what does that mean. Luckily, he's very good with technology, so he transitioned well. Okay, our toddler's no longer in daycare, so what does that look like of trying to have a parent that's trying to work, trying to help another student, you're trying to run now a preschool in your home. And then that's when I launched the Fulfilled Mom movement as a co-founder with two of my other fellow peer coaches. And I would have never had the space or the bandwidth to do that with my full-time job and some of the other, my other responsibilities as a wife and a mom. Or it would have been more challenging. And I think that's where God really led me to learn new skills, like for real new skills. How to manage an email list campaign. Everything I had already been done for me. When you work in the corporate world, there's so many segments. It's like you do your role, stay in your lane, and you collaborate with people. But I had to become a true entrepreneur in like a matter of like 60 days. It was like, we're putting this on, we're doing this. I'm reaching out to experts. I'm explaining our vision. I'm like, can I interview you? I'm doing all these things. But it's amazing how God will push you in this situation to understand the skill sets that you're going to need and unveil it and help you learn and teach it. Like if we woke up every morning and could say, oh, I could just do that today, I don't know if we would approach it with some of the same energy and the hunger and the willingness to take the falls and the bumps and the bruises and the scrapes. And so I was out of work for, I guess, almost like 2 months. And I got a call back, which of course you're gracious and you're grateful and you're like, okay, I'm of value. A lot of times you tie your value to your job. But I went back, and within 10 days, I just went in my office and said, God, if I stay, where will I be in a year from now? And he was like, in this office. But it was not a contentious, like it's a bad place or anything like that. It was just an understanding of what direction my life would be in. And I think that sometimes when we're praying for something, or when we're speaking with God about something, or we're seeking clarity, or we're asking him to help guide us, are we paying enough attention to like what, almost like it's a collaboration with him as well, which is like, I'm going to protect you. I'm going to be here. But there's sometimes where, as you're making this decision, I need you to understand what the repercussions or the implications of it, or what it means for this moment. And for me, it was like, if I'm here in a year still from now, I don't know that many of the other projects or passions or purposeful moments of coaching individuals and helping people get clarity on their purpose and values will get to happen. And so I made the difficult decision to come home and tell my husband I'm resigning, and I'm resigning in like 6 weeks. He's like, what? But I always share and give credit to him and to, our marriage vision that we have for our family, and it being very faith-based, because he did ask me, what does support look like then? Like, how do I show up for you as a partner to make this happen? And I thought, man, gosh, it's like a word even beyond blessed. Like I'm so in alignment with who I'm supposed to be with. And it's just, I felt like it wasn't so much a difficult decision rather than a thoughtful decision.
A thoughtful decision. And the moment that you stood in that place, everything else was in its proper alignment, where your husband was there, was like, how can I serve you? And your community within your entrepreneurship journey, that was there. And what's so amazing is that you're in this position now where it was like you had your trial run before with being there on purpose with your mom, to where now you're helping other moms to really stand in their purpose and to become who they're supposed to be in that moment. I'm going to be a little selfish right here for this second. And I want you to share with me, as a mom in waiting. I don't have children just yet, but that is something on the top priority faith list for my husband and I. What are one or two tips that I should consider in this waiting season that should be my focus as the purpose is unfolding for me?
Oh, that's really good. Um, I think well, a lot of it has to deal with understanding. It's Simon Sinek's kind of golden circle model of, like why, how, and what.
Yeah.
So even as you're making this decision, knowing the whys behind how you want to raise your family, why do you want to even do it, in a way that way, or being driven, and, faith being a huge part of it, having that vision and being anchored in that, because the how is your values, and really having clarity on your actual values and how you define them, because you and your husband can both look at it from have the same word, and it be a little bit different or play out differently in our behaviors and our thoughts and in our feelings. I'll give you an example. My number one value, like in a prioritized order, is joy for me, but my husband's is connection. That doesn't mean joy isn't as important. So for me, even in challenging situations, if I feel peace and I'm not anxious, I have joy. The moment anxiety shows up for me, I typically am overwhelmed, and he calls it my ship is sinking moment. But for him, with connection being of like top value and how he interacts with others and the world around him, if I'm say that I'm watching a movie with him, there's no like, don't bring your phone, don't be distracted, don't keep getting up and other stuff. And I used to do some of those things, and I didn't realize why. He'd be like, well, don't even worry about watching a movie. And like, he'd be easy to turn it off until we could start to articulate, well, what's the behaviors that support these values, so that his why of creating connection shows up like this, because I now know the value, so I can deliver on the what. So I think a lot of that you can do, and the more you anchor in that, especially as a parent, because you're going to get this little human that no matter how much DNA you share with them, is their own spiritual being that's going to come here and leave their imprint, on the world. And so if you as a mom know kind of that process, you're going to be able to think about, how do I nurture that in my children, and even at earlier ages. I have a 10-year-old and I have a 2-year-old, and my 2-year-old loves affirmations, loves to say, I am who I am. I'm a mover unto my own beat. It just really speaks to her. And my son, he kind of will look in the mirror and be like, oh, I don't know, you want me to say this to this? And so how do we move about his shaping of his values? So you realize, if you can have a good grounding, back to your question, if you as a mom have true understanding of who you are showing up in your marriage and what values you're going to impart in your husband, doing it and saying, we're going to be nurturing the soil, the ground that someone's going to grow their values out of. Because guess what we will interact with in the world is that child's behavior, and it's a direct reflection of their beliefs and value system and how they view the world.
Oh, that was amazing, Lynette. That just really helped me to clearly understand, because sometimes when you're waiting, it's like, I'm waiting, like you build up this unnecessary anxiety. But that really just helped shift my perspective to be like, well, you know what, this is where I could really build a stronger foundation while I'm waiting for it to happen, instead of spending so much time and energy into being anxious about, well, when will it happen? How will it happen? And all these other things. And we had an awesome conversation the other day while we were preparing for the podcast about emotional intelligence. And I love everything about that. I feel as if, sometimes when someone comes along in their faith journey, right? And they are believing the Lord to do so many great things in their lives, right? But then He will equip individuals like yourself to help them to deal with the emotional side of who they are, as we are human beings living on this earth. We're having this great experience. We're tapping into who we are spiritually. But then there's still these other behaviors that show up that we're just like, where did this come from? What is the root cause of all of this? I love the Lord, but like, I can't like, why does this thing keep showing up in my life? And I'm so excited that you're in this place in your life where you're helping so many people navigate emotional intelligence. If someone never heard of that term, give us the one-on-one understanding of what that means.
Yes, I love that we were talking about this the other day, and we were, talking about, oh, what happens when you're next thing you know, you're yelling at somebody in a meeting. You're like, how did this happen? But really, at the base level, to break it down, emotional intelligence is about understanding your thoughts, feelings, and emotions enough and at a deeper level that you will respect yourself, you will love yourself no matter what, even in those sometimes the behavior that comes up. And by you doing that for yourself, you can then extend that to others. I know that I think a lot of times in the Christian world, we were like, oh, just extend grace. Oh, just extend grace. I'm going to give them grace. But part of that becomes, I think, really to do that a lot of times is working on yourself and understanding what what potentially some of your triggers are. And by the way, a lot of times when that happens, it's really a conflict with your values. So you go into a
Mm.
situation, let's use the example if someone were to lie, and that's really like not one of your values, it angers you. And you're going to behave towards that person in a certain way typically. And sometimes if you're mature and you've grown in those areas, you can find a way to have that conversation with them. As a parent, I think about that as we talk with our children about there's no value in lying to us because you'll actually get further with us by telling the truth. The behavior that you're going to see is going to look very different if you lie versus if you walk me through and have expressed to them, I still get the opportunity to be upset if you do something that you should not have done. I still get the opportunity to be disappointed. I get to own every emotion that comes with it. But if you lie to me, you now have violated trust, and that's a different experience. And so it's
Mm.
kind of that trying to display that level of emotional intelligence with parenting, because in the moment it's like you can skyrocket because you know what's on the other side of that to a degree as a parent, and you want to protect your children and do some other things. But I'm real in understanding that this is their human experience here too, and I'm here to guide, teach, grow, nurture, and do that in love. And that to me is also what emotional intelligence is I love myself enough to respect myself in behaviors that I may do, to acknowledge if there are behaviors that I want to change and that am empowered to change. And why by working on myself to do that, I can then extend that to others.
That's just like the unfolding of grace. Everything that you just explained, it really brings to life these words that we read, that we try to embody and walk in. But then we're like, how is this even possible? Like, how are we commissioned to do these things as a believer? Somebody that's just interested in being better in their faith walk. You literally just unfolded this beautiful gift to show us how it is possible, just like the book.
Yes, it is. It really is. But it's
Yes.
it's that conscious awareness. And I know a lot of times it's tied to like mindfulness and just that term, but it really is about taking a moment to elevate yourself and understanding how that we call it the triangle, right? Our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions, they're all going to interact on each other. How you behave, if you do something and then you regret it, well, what are the feelings that you then have? You have that shame or that guilt. And then after that, what are the thoughts that you have? And if you keep getting wrapped up inside the triangle, if you keep sticking yourself there, rather than taking a moment and pausing and understanding, hey, this is, sometimes I have to tell my, older one, I need a moment because we are very similar personalities as well. And I say, because I don't feel like I have the words, and he's very smart and he's very intelligent and very logical though, and almost exactly to what you say. And so you have to be very clear in that type of stuff. So sometimes it's okay to say, I'm pausing because I want to handle this situation very well and I want it to go well for you and for me. You
Oh, I
know,
love that. I
so
love
and
that you
it's not like
say,
that all the time.
yeah, yeah. And I love that you say you want to handle the situation well and not perfect.
Oh yeah.
Because sometimes we can get caught up, even as you're describing the triangle aspect of it, we can get caught up in this level of perfectionism and making sure everything is just at the right precise moment. But when you are in tune with who God has created you to be and the blueprint that He's given us to live, it gives you this opportunity to walk in grace and be okay with those moments of pausing, be okay with digesting every situation to the best of your ability, and also sometimes just quite frankly letting it go, not feeling as if that you have to be in control of everything that's around you. And as we're coming down to the end of our conversation, I want you to share with us, what are some things that you are committed to when it comes to your faith? What does that look like for you?
Oh, well, right now I'm very excited about, I'm doing a devotional actually with my boss, with Sierra over at the publishing company, who I'm doing project management with. So that's just been really awesome and amazing to be in an environment where it's like that's the foundation to support the work that I do, part-time with her. So I do better. It sounds so I think every parent would recognize this. The moment I give myself 10 to 15 minutes before they're up, I'm much better. But it really does look like, even if I'm still laying in the bed or people are starting to move around the house, like I have to give that reverence. I have to like have a moment of just acknowledgement and prayer. We're actually like working with the kids right now on like what prayer looks like for them and letting them pray and letting them lead us. And recently I was introduced to the question to ask like what prayers have been answered. So like for my kids to see that, to be able to see it manifested. So that it's not so much as like, well, knock it off the list, but to make that connection. So I love that. So trying to be deliberate in that space. Um, I think I also love like the fact that you can be in perpetual prayer. Like you can be in your car, you can be walking around, like now you understand like when your grandmother would be walking around and be like, help me, Holy Ghost. It wasn't that we were like always getting on her nerves, but it was just one of those moments of like that connection. So a lot of reading, a lot of, I think study. Recently, my husband and I got together and we were asked to talk about what we did to build our marriage vision. So teaching and sharing and growing others. So that was just an awesome experience to do that virtually for a friend's church. So I think I try my best to just let it be in service to my family, in service to business, in service to others. But it really does come down to the deliberate time of study. I've joined in on a couple of your Bible studies, been able to make either the Zoom call or replays or listen. Um, and really taking that construct and that concept that while we're not have our physical body of church, like we actually haven't been back since March, since the lockdown, even though there's measures in place, you can make your reservation. We're just, from a safety perspective, and my husband's out and throughout the whole week anyway, we're like, let's just not increase the risk. For right now, it's that church can be anywhere. And so, really, where do you and how do you make it so foundational? So.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the fact that you and your husband are together with helping other couples with building their marriage vision. We'll have to, do something with that at another time. I just love that idea. And listening to you share your journey and being committed to your faith, I'm just like hearing Lynette's embodying a Proverbs 31 woman, like having that small moment in the morning of just you and the Lord and preparing and still being what your children need and what your husband need. It's dynamic. So thank you so much, Lynette. And before we close, how can people connect with you?
Oh, again, thank you.
Yeah.
So much. Glad to be here with you today, and I support everything that you're doing. So everybody, please join Marilyn for her Bible studies. They are powerful. So I'm pretty much more active on LinkedIn. I just like the platform, and I like intentional connections. Not that you can't get it from other social media formats, but I want to be of service to others and build referral networks. And I just think that there's some amazing people out there doing some great work, and so I like to see that as well. I am on Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn, Lynette Phillips. You can find me on Instagram as well, Lynette T. Phillips. I am on Facebook, Lynette T. Phillips. So shoot me a note, invite me to your group. I'll try to be active and engage. I do have my own website. My husband, give kudos to him. He's never been a website designer, but he did an awesome job. LynettePhillips.com. You can send me an email, hello@LynettePhillips.com. I'm happy to connect with others, find out, anything from someone interested in doing, a discovery call, to kind of understand how my coaching may fit into what their journey is and their needs and what they need right now, and that clarity, all the way to a full program. So happy to connect.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lynette, for spending time with me today on the podcast. Thank you for all of those that are listening or watching wherever you are. Your support to Live and Share is greatly appreciated. If you would love to listen in to amazing conversation with successful individuals like Lynette, head over to iliveandshare.com and be sure to follow me on social media. And I am Marilyn Shaw. Thank you again for being a part of this conversation. And to all of you that are watching, have an amazing day. And I will talk with you soon.